All right, everybody, this video will help you break down and get a deeper understanding of what organelles are and their functions inside of eukaryotic cells. Eukaryotic cells, remember, fall under two categories: plant cells and animal cells. All right, so first of all, why are we studying cells in the first place? Well, if we understand cells, then we can understand most diseases and disorders because they can typically be explained by some sort of issue taking place at the cell level. We can also study cells to understand how we get energy out of food and how the different systems of our body are able to accomplish what they do. You see an image right here, for example, of a healthy red blood cell versus a sickle cell diseased red blood cell. And so we can explain all the impacts of that disease, sickle cell anemia, based completely because of an issue at the cell level. All right, so let's go organelle by organelle here, and let's start with the cell membrane. So the cell membrane is a membrane-like sac that wraps around the cell. We find it in both prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells, so it is the one organelle that we can see across both types. In terms of its structure, it's a thin layer around the cell. It's mostly made of lipids or fats, and it's this thing called selectively permeable, which basically just means that it decides what gets to go in and out of the cell. It provides support and protection for the cell, and we're going to find it in both plant and animal cells. I kind of want you to imagine like the cell membrane, sort of like the latex part of a balloon. If you were to pop that balloon, everything inside, the air, would escape, right? So if you didn't have the cell membrane, all the stuff inside the cell would come out. In terms of an analogy or something that we could compare it to, if we were going to say the cell is like a company, okay, then the cell membrane would be like the security guard in the front of the building. Okay, so now let's talk about the cell wall. In terms of its structure, it is the rigid, strong exterior wall outside of a plant cell. It's made of a starch called cellulose, and it's a really fibrous material. It has little holes inside called pores, and that's to allow water to come in and out of a plant cell. In terms of what it does, it provides support or like a rigid structure for a plant cell, and it also provides protection. If you think about it, if a plant didn't have a cell wall, it wouldn't be able to stay up straight like you might see like a celery, right? A celery isn't limp and sagging, it's straight up because it has the rigid support of its cell wall. We're only going to find it in plant cells and not in animal cells. In an analogy form, in our company that is the cell wall will be the support beams that are in the walls holding up the building. Okay, so now let's talk about the cytoplasm. The cytoplasm is the jelly-like fluid, so that yellow stuff you're seeing right here, that all the other organelles are floating around in. It's a clear substance and it fills the whole interior of the cell, and it provides support for all the organelles to kind of float in. It's found in both plant and animal cells. It supports and protects the organelles within the cell, and it also helps move substances around the cell, like moving a sack of material from one organelle to another organelle inside the cell, and the cytoplasm will help do that. It also carries out some important chemical reactions that will help you get energy out of your food, for example. If we were to compare it to our company, the cytoplasm would be like the air or the space inside the building. Okay, let's talk about the nucleus. Super important organelle. We are going to find it as one of the, if not largest, structures inside the cell. So you can see those dark blobs inside of these different animal cells. That's the nucleus. It actually moves around, though it's often seen like right in the middle of the cell. It contains the DNA. And it also is inside of another special membrane called the nuclear membrane, which I'll show you in a moment. What is its function? Its main job is that it contains the DNA, which is the cell's instructions. It tells all the other organelles what to do. It is found in both plant and animal cells. If we were to give it an analogy, it would be like the main office of the company where all of the decisions are made for the rest of the company, or in this case, for the rest of the cell. Okay, so that deeper dive into the nucleus. So, like I said, it has its own membrane. So here is an animal cell. We can see the nucleus is in the dead center, and wrapped around it is that nuclear membrane. You can also see there's holes or pores, and the reason for those is so that information can be sent in and out of that main information center. Okay, so connected to the nucleus is a structure called the endoplasmic reticulum. And just like I showed you in this previous slide, those holes where the information goes in and out, if it's going out, the message is going to be sent to the endoplasmic reticulum first. It's a network of membranes that are kind of squished together, and they're directly connected to that nucleus. They are dotted with things called ribosomes. And if they are dotted with ribosomes, which I'll talk about in just a moment, it's called rough ER because those ribosomes attached to the membrane make it kind of rough. So, what's the job of the endoplasmic reticulum? It's going to be transporting things. It's going to be moving molecules inside the cell. It also has a really important job of helping make proteins. Like one of the instructions that the DNA will often give to the cell is to build some proteins. And so the endoplasmic reticulum says, yes, boss, and starts building those proteins. We will find the endoplasmic reticulum, or the ER, in both plant and animal cells. If we were to give it an analogy for our company, it's like the assembly line. It's going to be building lots of things on that structure. Okay, so now let's talk about the Golgi body or the Golgi complex. It's kind of called both. It's a stack of flattened membrane stacks. It kind of looks like squished up pancakes all stuck together. It floats around in the cytoplasm, so it's not directly connected to anything, but it does often get packages from that endoplasmic reticulum. Basically, what it does is it takes things that get built and it makes sure that they are locked and loaded and they're perfect for use in the cell. So they modify, package, and transport the proteins for the cell. They're found, the Golgi body is found in both plant and animal cells, and we could just think of them as like the packaging department. They take the stuff from the assembly line and they package it up and make sure it's perfect. Okay, so now let's talk about those ribosomes, the things that can make ER, or the endoplasmic reticulum, rough. So if they are floating around freely, they're going to look like dots inside of the cytoplasm, that jelly-like fluid. They're made of protein, and they do basically all the work of producing proteins. I call them the workbench of protein synthesis. They build proteins. And there's actually a reason I'm using two arms, because they have two parts. You can see they have an upper portion and a lower portion. Their big job is to make proteins. They are like the workers on the assembly line. They are like the busy worker bees. They're found in both plant and animal cells. Okay, let's talk about the mitochondria, which is a really important organelle that keeps you alive. You can see it's kind of like peanut shaped, and you can see it also has two layers, an outer membrane and an inner membrane. And that's important because the more membrane you have, the more space or surface area you have, it just means you can do more stuff. And that's really important because the mitochondria is going to be taking all the food that you eat and converting it into energy that your body can actually use, called ATP. That process that I'm talking about, where we take food energy and convert it into energy our body can use, that's called cellular respiration. And it's the mitochondria that does all of that. We will find the mitochondria in both plant and animal cells because both of those types of organisms need energy. The analogy would be that it would be the power generator for the company. Okay, chloroplasts are a special energy organelle, and they're only going to be found in plants. And you can see they also have two layers of membranes for the same reason as the mitochondria, because the more membrane you have, the more work you can do. And they contain green chlorophyll, and that's the reason that plants are green. And there's lots and lots of stacks of membranes inside. Basically, what they do is the job of photosynthesis. They make food that the plant can use so it can keep growing and developing. Again, it's not found in animal cells. You cannot go outside in the sunlight and photosynthesize for food. So, in terms of an analogy, it's like a chef for the plant. It makes food for the plant. Okay, let's talk about the lysosome. The lysosome are small, round membrane balls. And basically, what is inside of them is very similar to what's inside your stomach. They have lots of digestive enzymes to break stuff down. Just like our body creates waste product, so do our cells. And our cells aren't going to leave that crap lying around in the cell. They want to break it down and get rid of it as waste. And so its job is to break things down with those digestive enzymes and recycle it. It's mainly found in animal cells, but we could find it in some plant cells too. My analogy would be it's the recycling program. But I would say it's also the waste program. There's definitely stuff that the cell produces that just gets excreted out of you, but there are also some pieces that it can reuse and recycle. Okay, the vacuole of the cell. This is a plant cell, and you know it's a plant cell because plant cells have enormous central vacuoles, and it's full of water, and that makes sense. It's like a plant's little water storage house. But for animals, they also have vacuoles, but they would be much smaller, and they're also storing things like food and water and materials for the cell. So basically, they're just little sacs if they're animal cells, and one big sac if it's a plant cell that stores things. So my analogy is that it's like the storage lockers at the company. All right, you guys, those are your organelles with the structures, functions, and where they are located. So now we're going to use that information to do a whole bunch of other work about how cells work.